Welcome to Lesson 4 in Unit 16, Pinball Wizards. In this lesson, students will work to answer the question, how can we make the pinball move without touching it? In this lesson, students begin to investigate magnets. They use carnival games to collect data on properties of objects that attract to magnets and how close a magnet has to be to an object to get it to attract. Students figure out that magnets attract certain types of metal and that they apply a force to pull the metal in. This force can be applied from a distance, making it a non-contact force. Students make connections to the storyline by applying what they've learned about magnetic force to add tricks to their pinball games. There are several opportunities for ELA cross-curricular connections throughout the lesson. You can look for specific standard connections in the Unit 16 Teacher Guide. This lesson will take approximately 3 to 4 days to complete. To start the Lesson 4 Engage portion, you'll ask students questions about what they've already learned about forces they can use in their pinball games and what else they need to add to their games. You'll show students a pinball video and ask them what they notice and wonder about the pinball machine. You'll then revisit the driving question board and add any new questions and highlight others connected to the learning goals of this lesson by calling attention to questions about how to add tricks to the board. You'll then put students in partners or groups of 3 and pass out the Woolly Willy toys for students to investigate and make observations. You'll circulate and listen in on student discussions as they describe their observations and ask questions. You'll ask students how they could investigate magnets in order to add tricks to their pinball games and what questions they could ask to get more information. For the Explore portion of the lesson, you'll set up and carry out the Catching Fish investigation. There is a teacher tutorial showing the setup, linked in the Teacher Guide. You'll put students into groups of 4 and provide them with materials pictured here. You can pause the video to review. You'll have students draw what they observe in their Catching Fish student journal page as they play their games. As they investigate and make observations, you'll keep track of what they have noticed. You can collect trends in a notebook or on the board to come back to during the explain. You'll ask each group to look around the room and find 3 new materials to test using their magnets. Before they test, they should list the materials they are testing and predict if the magnet will work on that object. Then they should test and record their results. For the Explain portion, you'll invite students to share their findings from the Catching Fish investigation. You'll use the provided questions to facilitate a discussion around the question, how can we make the pinball move without touching it? The goal of this class discussion is to analyze student data and identify the forces being applied by the magnet. Use the discussion to create the Lesson 4 summary chart. By the end of the discussion, students should understand that they can put magnets underneath their boards and use a pinball that the magnet would attract. You'll then introduce the book, What Makes a Magnet? You'll use the Read Aloud guide to read Part 1 of the book. You'll continue the discussion using student responses to add to the summary chart. During the discussion, you'll post the attract, magnetism, and non-contact vocabulary cards. You'll then have students return to their Catching Fish student journal page to draw an object that was attracted to the magnet and the forces at play during this interaction. For the Elaborate portion, you'll ask students questions about the magnetic force they observed and how it applies to their pinball machines, and add the student responses to the 3rd row of the summary chart. You'll have students add a trick to their Designing Pinball Tricks student journal page. For the Evaluate portion, you'll partner students up so they can share their drawings with each other. You'll have students explain how the magnetic forces are exerted in their magnetic trick design. They can take turns giving feedback and asking questions on how their pinball tricks work. To support student sense-making across the unit, orient them back to the driving question board. Ask, what did we learn about making the pinball move without touching it? And what new questions do we have? By the end of this lesson, students will have asked questions about getting objects to move without touching them, and conducted an investigation to collect data about how magnets apply forces to objects. In Lesson 5, students will continue to ask questions and investigate magnets, including identifying the repelling force between magnets. For more information about this unit, visit myscipartners.com.